I've been on camera more than 20 years, and I've run a multi-million-dollar video production studio for a bunch of years. So after being around countless studio setups and working with all kinds of lights, what are my absolute favorite lights for video? And what do I use? Hey, Larry Becker here. You're probably thinking I'm going to mention some crazy expensive light that would make video production pros drool. Well, no and yes. My favorite lights aren't crazy expensive, but they do make video production pros drool, and I even have proof. By the way, this episode is going to get a little nerdy, but stick around to the end. You'll probably catch on and get it. Specifically, my favorite lights come from a company called Westcott, and the specific product line is called the Westcott FLEX lights. These are dimmable LED panel lights, and the panels are available in a bunch of different sizes. They're incredibly lightweight, they're splash-proof, and they're really durable. And the flexibility means that they can be mounted where lots of lights have never gone before. And if you're into video production, you'll appreciate that they are incredibly color accurate. They have a very high CRI. If you don't know what that means, don't worry about it. There are even models that come in daylight or tungsten, so video pros can match the environmental lighting that they're working in, and some models are even mixable light colors. So let me break all this down for you. When you're shooting videos, you almost always need to add light because you get better quality video with that extra light. You could use something really inexpensive like hardware store clamp lamps, and with a daylight adjusted compact fluorescent bulb, we'll talk about what that means in a second, you can actually get decent results. There are some pretty sweet entry-level professional lighting kits available. And there are super expensive, highly controllable, very specialized lighting options on the market for cinematic and Hollywood reasons. Now, the reason that the Westcott FLEX lights are my favorite is because they're incredibly controllable, they are absolutely pro quality, and they're far less expensive than those cinematic lights that can run into the tens of thousands of dollars. And did I mention they are super lightweight? I have carried around very heavy lights in trade show filming situations, and these are way better. Now, it's going to help if you understand the absolute basics of light temperature. And I'm not talking about heat, although these lights have the added benefit of very low operating temperatures compared to almost everything else on the market besides other LEDs. And I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the color or the color cast that light bulbs can have. Pro photographers and videographers understand that what we call daylight bulbs are generally said to be in the 5,000 degrees Kelvin range. And that kind of light helps your camera see colors very accurately. Even consumer light bulb packaging a lot of times has the word daylight on them. So some consumer packages also will say warm, and photographers would call something like that 3,500 degrees Kelvin, or somewhere in that range. These are typically something like a tungsten light bulb and the traditional bulbs that we have in our homes. This gives a warmer color, and it makes cameras see things with a little bit of an orange tint. Now, it's true that cameras can compensate for various light tints and even mixed light, but they don't ever do as good as the human eye. And if you're setting up lights and you're adding lights to a scene, the daylight lights, the 5,000 degrees Kelvin or so, you're going to be much more likely to not have to worry about making adjustments or getting your camera to compensate. For the record, I always tell people, start with daylight adjusted lights for your videos. It just makes things easier. This was the first model of the Westcott FLEX panel light that came out a couple of years ago. I got my hands on an early release unit, and I did a review of the light for B&H Photo back in the day. In fact, if you start looking into these lights, you should watch that brief video from YouTube because there's a bunch of great information there. So this original Flex panel is 10 inches by 10 inches, and it has 144 daylight LEDs. Recently, this model was replaced by a 12 by 12 or a 1 foot by 1 foot, which also has 144 LEDs, and essentially the same amount of brightness and the same kinds of controls, but that 1 square foot size is more industry standard. Now this Flex panel was originally released in a daylight version and a tungsten version. So lighting pros, again, could pick the panel to match the environment that they were working in. I love that this light is dimmable, and it's absolutely flicker-free for video. A lot of LEDs and fluorescent lights often have a flicker that messes with video frame rates. These don't, no matter how much you dim or make them brighter. There are a bunch of additional features available with Flex lights, and some of them are beyond what I need. And if you're into your own in-house video for your business, you might want some of these extra features, or you might not need them at all. With my in-house mini studio, it's no problem that you need to plug these lights into AC power. On the other hand, if you need a lighting setup that works mobile, or maybe that works outdoors because you want to add light to an environment outdoors where you're working in sunshine but it's not quite properly lit, you'll appreciate that there are optional batteries available for these lights. Another more advanced option is that there are not only daylight or tungsten versions available, but like I said, there are some models of these panels that have both on the same panel, tungsten and daylight bulbs. And those then come with a dial that you can adjust to mix the light, and that same dial, flip a switch, and that same dial you can dim or brighten the overall lighting. Now I mentioned that there are lots of size options available. Of course, there's a 1 foot by 1 foot, but there's also 1 foot by 2 feet, 1 foot by 3 feet, and those can be mounted on cinematic style frames called scrim gems, which Hollywood studios love. And besides the bigger panels, there are smaller ones available. Check this one out. It's a 10-inch by 3-inch panel with warm and daylight LEDs, and you can dial in precise light color. This is the control, plus the lightweight and battery options even make this awesome for pros. They go nuts for flex panels. I know firsthand because when I hosted one of the 1-hour-long talk shows for the National Association of Broadcasters convention earlier this year in Las Vegas, this happened.
I actually brought one with me today.
You gotta show this off. People just they can't get their head around how cool this is, because when I was covering the NAB show, I guess 3 years ago, we had some rented panels that looked like they were that size. They were heavy.
Yeah.
I helped the team carry them from place to place to place. They were heavy.
You remember that, huh?
Yeah, I remember it very well, and that's why when I picked up your Flex light the very first time, I was like, wow, that's light.
Yeah, so it weighs, I mean, the mat itself weighs next to nothing. I mean,
yeah,
mere ounces. And it looks like a traditional 1x1 that you've got right here. But what's really cool is it's all just on a scrim gem frame. We've literally skinned our whatever diffusion we want on the front side of it. This actually is one of our 1x1 bicolors, and it packs a lot of punch.
Whoa. Yes, it does.
So,
and I know the crew is back there going, what are they doing to the light?
Yeah, sorry to mess with the exposure there. So. But, you know, and it's also a perfect combination with our scrim gem that's been around for, 20 plus years. You know, to be able to just pick any size you want, skin it to the back of the scrim gem frame, and be up and running in a mere second. So
I got to tell you a funny thing. I have an IFB, and I can kind of hear what's going on behind the scenes, and all the people behind the scenes are like, I want one of those. I want one of those.
But yeah. It's that technology right there that is enabling everybody to kind of use these smaller cameras, because that's the problem with them. Whether it's the GoPros or your cell phone camera, anything else, you don't have enough. It's not a big enough lens. You're not getting enough light into it, so you can't get the quality, right. But by adding more light in places where before maybe you couldn't, or it was inconvenient to do that, now all of a sudden these smaller format cameras are able to capture much higher quality imagery thanks to the lighting that's in the room, where before everything was just grainy and dull and noisy. Now
what's cool is that the NAB convention is more than 100,000 broadcast industry leaders and professionals, and the guys working on all this pro gear on our show were blown away by the Flex panels. They all wanted them. Let's not forget the reason they're called Flex in the first place.
And now I have this flexible LED mat on the back side of it.
And that can go so many places.
Exactly.
You guys have them in China balls, you have them, you can hide them in places on sets.
Yeah. No, I mean, and actually our set here is, we've actually built a house. You know, a lot of lighting companies, you'll walk by and you'll see a bunch of lights sitting up on light stands, and that's great. and you can probably get an idea of how you can use it. But what we've done is we've built a house, because a lot of people are walking into a house, an office, and they're like, I don't have space for light stands.
Right.
Because this is so light, a lot of people tape these to the wall.
I Velcro
Gaff
them to the
up
wall, absolutely.
Velcro them to the wall.
Now, one more reason that I use and I recommend the daylight version of these lights is because I'm doing simple production. And I don't have lots of lighting situations where I need to mix light and match ambient light. If I was getting into a pro mobile setup, I'd probably spend a little bit more and get the mixable color version. But even with my daylight only lights, if I run into a situation where I need to warm up those lights, I can do it with something called a quarter cut CTO gel, or a half cut that's a little bit more orange. It's this kind of cellophane, but it's very color accurate, and you can get it from photography supply companies like B&H Photo in New York. And if that doesn't add enough warmth, you just double up the sheets. This flex panel is available by itself or in a kit with a swivel mounting clip and a diffuser. I put my CTO gel under the diffuser, or you can clip it to the front with a clothespin. So are flex panels for everybody? No. They are definitely my favorite, and I recommend them to a lot of people. I would describe them as the Lexus of video lighting options. So Hollywood pros might go for something like the Lamborghini, and beginners might go for a Ford Focus. But if you've got the budget and you want lots of features to make video lighting fun and accurate and easy, go for the Lexus. I mean the Flex. Leave me a comment and tell me what you think. What kind of lights do you use? What are you going to do? Do you have questions about these flex panels and how I use them? Or do you have questions about simple in-house video production or setups? Do you want to know about teleprompters and gear and microphones? What do you want to know about? Leave it in the comments below. Be sure to subscribe to my videos. We get them coming out every single weekday. And when you have a free minute, go by LarryBecker.tv. You'll find a bunch more resources there.